Hello, everyone. My name's Abby, and I'm the Wellness Coordinator with GatorCare. Today, we're going to talk about work-life alignment, what it is, why it's important, and most importantly, how you can work towards alignment in your own life. So today, throughout the presentation, there will be pauses for you to write down on your handout. So at this time, if you haven't printed out or have this handout ready, the work-life alignment handout, I would do that now because we will be going through that and filling out some things throughout the presentation. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So I want you to begin by thinking if you can identify with any of the following statements. I feel out of alignment. I feel pulled in a million different directions. I don't have enough time. I'm not thriving. And I want more energy for things that matter most. If any of those things hit home and you felt those feelings before, these are common feelings of living out of alignment. But why is that? And hopefully that's the question that we'll answer for you today. So we'll start off by thinking about what gets the best of us between work and life. What gets more of our mental energy, our focus, our passion? Think about that. And if work is what gets the most of you, who or what gets what's left? And is that enough? So it's important to start off thinking about where we spend the majority of our time, energy, passion. So then we can identify where to start and how we can work towards alignment in our own lives. So what is work-life alignment? Work-life alignment occurs when one is equally comfortable at work and outside of the office, handling both personal and professional activities in either environment. So work-life alignment takes a holistic approach, thinking of one's career as an integral part of life, rather than something totally separate from those activities you enjoy outside of life. So with that in mind, I want you to think about your life currently. Are you satisfied with your current job role or your company's mission that you're working towards? Or how much energy and time you're able to spend on yourself or your friends and family outside of work? When we talk about work-life alignment, what we're talking about, what we're really saying is that we want more say in our life. And that's key. So I want you to picture this scenario written by Dr. Patricia Thompson. You say, "How are you?" to someone in the elevator. She gives you a knowing look, rolls her eyes, and says, "It's Monday." You both know what that means. After all, how good could you possibly feel considering you have a whole work week ahead of you? But what if you actually loved your job and found meaning in it? What if it aligned with your strengths, values, and worldview? Wouldn't you have a different attitude? Wouldn't you even be looking forward to your week instead of feeling like it was a massive drain? And this is the goal, probably what we all want in our lives and for our professional career. And this is one of the reasons why living in alignment is so important. And hopefully today I can help you understand what alignment really is and how you can achieve a sense of meaning and enjoyment in your life. So that brings me to why work-life alignment is important. So besides the fact that you might be happier at work if you do feel like you're living in alignment, I want you to consider this quote, "You can't pour from an empty cup," by Joseph Fleming. So imagine this cup holding your personal resources, your mental energy, your time, your passion, your focus. And if you've spent all these resources on work, what is left for when you get home from work? Your cup will be empty and you have nothing left to pour into your personal life outside of the office. And vice versa. If you spend all your resources on your life outside of the office, you'll have nothing left to pour into your professional life. So learning how to manage both comfortably is important for your personal and professional well-being. And we see when you do feel more successful and in alignment in your personal life, that you feel like you're succeeding in work as well. So I want you to think about this quote, the statistic that I found. says that studies affirm only around 30% of employees are fully engaged in their jobs these days, costing companies more than $400 billion a year in productivity loss. That just goes to show how employees who believe they don't have enough time for their personal lives feel drained and distracted while at work. And in addition to lost productivity for the company, the spillover of those negative feelings towards your job and your personal life can lead to job exhaustion and disruption of relationships with your family and friends, loss of enjoyment, and even increased stress in your life. So living in alignment is beneficial for everyone, because living in alignment can negate some of these negative side effects for your personal life. And also it's beneficial for your company, when it's been proven that when you're fully satisfied in your personal life, that you pour more into your work life. So if you feel like you're living in alignment, it'll kind of come naturally, and you'll feel more engaged in all aspects of your life. So on top of that, staying in alignment is necessary to renew your personal resources, like your time and energy. Researchers Jeffrey Greenhouse and Gary Powell, they recommend that work and personal life should be allies, and that participation in multiple roles, such as being a parent, partner, friend, employee, can actually enhance your physical and psychological well-being, especially when all these roles are managed together and are high quality. So what are the consequences of working and living out of alignment? There are actually some physical side effects of living out of alignment. The most significant would be increased stress. And stress can cause, as we know, physical ailments, including a weaker immune system. You could get sick more often. It causes tension in your personal relationships, and it can actually flare up some symptoms of underlying medical conditions. Living out of alignment also puts you at a higher risk for substance abuse. And most often you get less sleep when you're living out of alignment and you feel increased stress in your life. In 2012, 70.1 million US adults reported sleeping 6 hours or less. And sleep deprivation is associated with obesity, anxiety and depression, reduced immune system function, again, diabetes and cardiovascular problems as well. So it's very important to feel like you're living in alignment and achieving, feeling meaning in your life and enjoyment, because some of these physical symptoms can very well affect you. So when we start to get really busy, we often start to operate based on these unrealistic beliefs. So I want you to imagine these few feelings or these beliefs that sometimes people think, and see if you can relate to them. So I feel like my professional life and my personal life should be kept completely separate. And if they overlap too much, I didn't set good boundaries. So think about that. Have you ever felt that way? That's one unrealistic belief we start to believe. And we often operate like this when we get really busy and stressed out. Another one would be work and life should be perfectly balanced. And if I can't maintain a satisfying sense of equity, I'm doing something wrong. So I think this would be a good time to kind of state a disclaimer throughout this presentation. I just want you to keep in mind that everyone's passions lie in different places, So some people, they really find joy in accomplishing a task at work by the assigned deadline, and they like working towards their company's mission. That gives them energy, makes them feel more like themselves. And then others enjoy making deep personal connections with others, with their families or friends, or even spending time alone to self-reflect. So this is not a one-size-fits-all formula when it comes to work-life alignment. The key is that you're finding joy in both your work and your life outside of work, and feel satisfied in both areas, can manage those equally. So you may have heard in the past of work-life balance. And the majority of the time when people are talking about work-life balance, they're talking about the same thing as work-life alignment. But the term balance has become outdated. And that's because it isn't the best way to describe work and life. So Often when we use the term balance, it implies that you have work on one hand and the rest of your life on the other. Balance 50-50, which I don't know about you, but that does not sound very realistic to me. And when we think of the word balance, we're also thinking of life as good, work is bad, these two separate entities. And we often feel stressed out when those lines blur and life seeps into work, work seeps into life. And the fact is, that's just the way things go. That's the way life is. So instead, we need to aim for work-life alignment by crafting a meaningful professional life that matches up to who we are and what's important to you. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about how to actually do that in a minute. But we need to shift our mindset from these two separate entities, from work is bad, life is good, and approach it with a mindset that work and outside of work are both parts of life. And we want to be good and enjoy both of those aspects of our life. Research has shown that you're more prone to feel burnt out and a lack of balance when there's a mismatch between your values and your work. And that's merely why aiming for work-life balance may not be enough to deal with those feelings of overwhelm, disengagement, or even stress. And that's why we should approach it with a mindset of work-life alignment instead of balance. So I want you to take a minute and think about the last time you felt achievement, you achieved something, and you felt enjoyment from your work. We'll go through this little chart here, and basically this is a better way to visualize work-life alignment. So you can ask yourself these questions. When was the last time you felt achievement and enjoyment from work, family, friends, and self? And that's a good way to keep in check and try to work towards work-life alignment in your own life. So take a moment here and think about the last time that you achieved something and enjoyed it with your family. This could be maybe you cooked a family meal together and you achieved a delicious tasting meal, and you also enjoyed the time together and the way that the food tasted afterwards. And take another minute to think about the last time you achieved and enjoyed something with your friends. Maybe you played a game together and you guys enjoyed the process and you achieved a winner at the end. And lastly, this one's very important. Think about the last time or what you did to feel achievement and enjoyment for yourself. And this could be a thing, a feeling, maybe a new skill you learned, new knowledge. And when you think about these, I want you to look at your handout here, and on the top where it says seek daily achievement and enjoyment from these quadrants, I want you to think about which one of these you'd like to work on. So maybe you feel like you're lacking some achievement and enjoyment with your friends. Circle that and maybe jot down why you feel that way, or even what you want to do to work towards it. And you can pause here and take a moment to write that down. So next, we're going to talk about some actual tips and tricks, some actual steps to help you live in alignment yourself. So we'll talk about identifying your reality, some time management strategies. We'll talk about managing your energy more effectively, setting effective boundaries for yourself, and practicing self-care and mindfulness. So first, we're going to start off with identifying your reality. This is a time management strategy that we're going to talk about in depth. So energy is a renewable resource, but our time is not, meaning we have a limited number of hours every day. And this feeling of not enough is a big contributor to our feelings of living not in alignment. So through this activity, I want you to picture a mason jar as your day. There's 24 hours in your day. You can't get any more, can't get any less. And we fill up our day with our rocks, which are our core values, our pebbles, which are the must-be-dones, and our sand, which is filler. And when we start to fill up our jar, we have to put in our rocks first, because you can imagine if we filled it up with sand or pebbles first, there wouldn't be any room for our rocks. So our core values, or what we're referring to as our rocks in this activity, are things that matter most to you in life. So at this moment, pause the video and take a minute to write down on your activity sheet next to the rock image 1 to 3 of your core values, what really matter most to you in life. So we have to prioritize these things because they have to go into our jar first. So when you look at what you wrote down, your core values, how does that align with your job and how you're living your life currently? Maybe if you see some disconnect, then you need to make some changes there. But it's good to visualize it, write it down so you can see it. So we're prioritizing our core values. Those are the things that go into our jar first. We need to make time for those first in our life. Those are very important. So next we need to figure out how to do our must-be-dones more effectively. So those are things like going to work, sleeping, eating, things that we have to do, household chores. And if we can, we need to think about how to use more efficiently. So those would go into our jar next. So take a moment, I'm sure there's a lot of must-be-dones that you can think of, but take a moment and again on your worksheet, write down next to the pebble picture, a few 1 to 2, 1 to 3 things of your must-be-dones in your life. Think about ones that you could do more efficiently. So for example, maybe you leave for work 5 minutes earlier, 5 minutes later to miss the big traffic rush, or you use technology to help you, or even use a time management strategy, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. But take a second to write those down and even think about ways to do those more efficiently. So lastly, we need to figure out how to incorporate our filler into our day. And filler are those things that fill up our extra time. They don't fit into our core values or our must-be-dones, but there are other things that we enjoy, and they are important. We all need to decompress in our life. But we need to think about if the filler is leaving us feeling more rest and renewed and more like ourselves, or if it's making us feel more numbed and less like ourselves. So I want you to think back to yesterday and try to remember what you did yesterday that would be considered filler. So maybe you watched TV, read a book, talked to a friend, maybe you scrolled through TikTok, who knows, something that doesn't fit into your core values column or your must-be-dones, other things that kind of filled up the rest of your time throughout the day. And take a moment here to write down on your worksheet a few of those filler items. And think about, does that filler make you feel more like you? And maybe put a check or an X next to your filler items that you wrote down. So I want to go more into detail about some time management strategies. So these are actual time management strategies that you can use, you could implement in your own life to hopefully save you some more time. So when we were talking about our must-be-dones, these would primarily apply to that. So helping you do those things more effectively. So first, you could start off by evaluating where your time goes currently. So you could write down a list of all the activities you do in a current day and kind of estimate how much time it takes you to do each of those activities. And then you'll see visually where your time is going. You could also use the Pomodoro method, which if you are unfamiliar with the Pomodoro method, it's basically the concept of working in short, highly focused sprints and then taking a short break afterwards. So there's lots of apps that can help you do this. There's a Tomato Timer, and it helps you just chunk away at big projects and manage your time more efficiently. You could set appointments with yourself. If you have a calendar, you can block off times on your calendar to work on tasks that you need to. You could put your phone on do not disturb so you aren't tempted to procrastinate and get distracted. You could even say no. So our society, we have a hard time saying no nowadays, but if you know you have too much stuff piled up, you could say no, or you could simply start with saying yes, but not now. So there's no exception for me. I have a hard time with this as well, turning away tasks, but this is important, especially if you feel like you physically don't have time for that extra project or another task. If just saying yes, but not now, that's a good step in the right direction. You could use technology to its fullest by setting rules in Outlook, so it filters through your auto replies and other frequent emails. And you can even use checklists. So that's pretty simple. I'm sure a lot of you have used checklists in your life in general, but writing down everything you want to accomplish that day and checking them off as you go. Those are some different strategies that you could use to help you more effectively manage your must-be-dones throughout the day. Next, we're going to talk about our energy. And unlike our time, our energy is a renewable resource, so we can create more of it. However, the way we're currently working is not sustainable. So when you look at this graph on the left of the typical workday with no breaks, we start off our day with maximum energy, and that's assuming that we got a good night's rest. So we're busier than ever, and our society teaches us that in order to get ahead or even just stay afloat sometimes, we need to put in more time, more effort. We need to work longer, harder, faster. And sometimes we end up eating our lunch at our desk, not taking a break until we absolutely have to, where it's a necessity. And then often we take breaks and we choose to do activities that don't renew us. They make us feel more numb and less like ourselves. So what happens when we're constantly living this workday over and over again is when we get off work, we have little to no energy to spend on the time or to spend on those things that matter most to us. And often those things are what make us feel full and alive and living in alignment. And we're not giving the energy or attention that they deserve. So here's what we can do about it. So research tells us that our bodies and our brains can only sit still and focus for 90 to 120 minutes at a time. So that's an hour and a half to 2 hours. So naturally, it makes sense to build in breaks for rest and renewal every 90 to 120 minutes. You may be thinking, well, that sounds nice in theory, but I don't have time to take breaks every hour and a half to 2 hours. I will never get all my work done. I have too much stuff to do. And that's actually what we call the break myth. And that's the idea that restructuring our day to incorporate breaks will make us less productive because we're wasting company time. But actually, studies have proven that taking breaks replenishes our energy and in turn increases our focus and productivity. So taking these breaks allows us to never deplete our energy stores to a point of no return. So it is important to take those breaks early in the morning as well as in the afternoon. So I want you to think about restructuring your workday as a series of highly focused sprints instead of a partially focused marathon. So that means working intensely for 90 to 120 minutes max, and then taking a break for rest and renewal. So what's next is just as important though. When we take that break, we need to use it intentionally. We need to ask ourselves, what do we need in this moment? Maybe I've been working independently for a while and I need some social interaction. Or maybe I've been in a customer-facing role all day and I need some alone time. Maybe you've been sitting, you need to go walk outside. Ask yourself what you need in that moment. So I'll show you some examples of using your break wisely. So you could complete a fun work-related activity. It doesn't have to be non-work related. It could just be something that you enjoy doing that's work-related. You could go for a short walk. You could talk with a friend, or you can enjoy some alone time. You could even go enjoy nature, walk outside or meditate, read a book, or even take a little stretching break. Enjoyment's key here. You don't necessarily have to do something that's a long break or non-work related, just something enjoyable, asking yourself, what's important to me in this moment? What do I need to feel more like myself, rest and renewed? And here are some examples of using your breaks not so wisely. So having an employee wrestling match, probably not so wise. Caring for your pet that you smuggled into work, or laying under boxes to scare people, although I think that sounds pretty fun, but probably not a very wise use of your time. Warming your feet under the bathroom hand dryer, shaving your legs in the women's restroom, or changing clothes in your cubicle. These are not replenishing activities for your energy. So starting to take those shorter, more frequent breaks, you'll start to see a difference in your energy levels and how productive you are at work as well. The next tip into working into alignment would be setting boundaries with yourself. So asking yourself, how much do you want to work to seep into life, and how much do you want life to seep into work? And boundaries can look different. It could be physical space, it could be a time, it could be technology. So with physical space, it could be designating a specific work area if you work from home, or setting a space aside to yourself where you strictly work and focus. It could be setting a time, meaning this is when I work, this is when I don't work. Some people may have the luxury to dictate this to a certain extent. And you could even use technology. So when will I check my work email outside of work? When will I be totally unreachable and not answer work calls? And if it's in your personal life that you want to set this boundary for, maybe you decide places in your home where you allow yourself to use technology. For example, maybe you want to avoid using your cell phone in the dining room so you can be mindful of the food and enjoy the company of who's eating with you. So the next tip would be practicing self-care. And before we move on to that, there is a place on your activity sheet here to set some boundaries for yourself. So maybe, again, pause the video, take a moment to write down 1 to 3 boundaries that you'd like to try out and set for yourself. And maybe even an idea of how you'll use your work breaks when we talk about working in those highly focused sprints instead of a partially focused marathon. So take a moment to fill out those 2 sections on your activity sheet. And next, we're going to talk about self-care. So self-care encourages you to maintain a healthy relationship with not only yourself, but it also helps you react more positively with others. So take a moment and think about what you enjoy doing. What's something that you love? And maybe it's something you did as a kid that you want to get back into, but something that really makes you feel more like yourself, feel more alive and in alignment. And now I want you to think about what prevents you from doing those things. And how can you overcome those barriers that stand in your way of doing those things that you love and practicing self-care? If it's time restraints, you don't feel like you have enough time to do these things that you love, is there anything during the day that you can spend less time on and replace it with those activities that you love to do? For example, for me, I love to paint. However, I just feel like there's not enough time in the day to go upstairs, grab all my paint supplies, come down, and then have the creative energy to paint something new, and then clean it all up and do it again. So for me, I would like to set aside this time when I typically watch TV or scroll through my phone and switch it with painting. And that's because that's an activity that makes me happy and it rejuvenates my energy and helps me feel more like myself and in alignment. So self-care, it looks different for everyone. And basically, you just need to ask yourself, what will you do for yourself today or this week or this month? And what do I feel joy and achievement in? And try to aim for those daily. And my last tip for you would be to practice mindfulness. How often are you in this moment? How many times in the last 20, 30 minutes alone has your mind drifted off to something that happened or something that's going to come up in the future? This moment is the only moment that we have, and this is where we choose what comes next. So will we make time for something that we love, or will we fill it with something that numbs us? Will I be here with this friend actively listening to them, or will I drift off thinking about tomorrow? Will I focus on the work at hand or ruminate over what that person said in the meeting? So choose to invest your time in those small things that matter most to you. When you make the most out of each moment and you're intentional about what you invest your time in, it makes it more impactful and makes those moments count. And that's where you see those small things turn into big things. And I'm not saying mindfulness is easy, it's definitely not, but the more you work at it, the easier it becomes. So a few ways you can practice mindfulness in your life. If you're just starting out, you could try a 1-minute meditation while your coffee's brewing, or even listen to a guided meditation. Try accepting yourself. Treat yourself the way you would treat a good friend of yours. Live in the moment. Try to intentionally bring an open, accepting, and discerning attention to everything you do. You could even try doing nothing. Think about the last time you did nothing. I know I have a hard time even sitting watching TV and not scrolling on my phone at the same time. So just try sitting in silence, or start by doing just one thing at a time. And one of the best ways to get out of your body, or get out of your head and into your body, would be to return to your breath. So we're going to try this together. I want you to take a moment and get comfortable where you are. Maybe try putting your feet flat on the floor, relaxing your arms and your shoulders, and gaze in front of you softly, or even close your eyes if you feel comfortable. And draw your attention to your breathing without trying to control it at all. Just be mindful of how the air feels traveling in and out of your body. Now take 3 deep breaths in through your nose slowly, and out through your mouth slowly. And that's it. Most likely during this exercise, you are focused on your breathing and living in the present moment. You are focused on how the air feels going into your body and out of your body. And you can do breathing exercises with no equipment and little time. So it would be another good way to use your micro breaks at work even. And you don't have to be doing anything to be mindful. You can be mindful without doing anything. We just have to bring awareness to each moment that we live in. So the big picture with work-life alignment, be careful in the time frame in which you judge alignment. It's not easy. It's not going to come overnight. These things take practice, and they do take time to establish within your life. And you can't expect every moment of every day to be perfectly aligned. But also you don't want to fall into the idea of when I retire, I'll have a life, or when my kids graduate and move out, I'll do things that I enjoy doing. So make time for those things that you enjoy and invest in the small things that matter most to you, and be intentional about the time and energy that you spend. And this quote, I think, perfectly sums it up. This quote says, "The most dangerous risk of all, the risk of spending your life not doing what you want, on the bet you can buy yourself the freedom to do it later." So that aligns with the idea of when I retire, I'll have a life. So don't fall into that, but also don't expect every day to be perfect. So create some sort of balance in between, and hopefully you'll feel an enjoyment and achievement in your life. And that will make you feel like you're living more in alignment. So lastly, I want to leave you with an action item. On the back side of your worksheet, there's a blank sheet and it says, what's one thing you'll do this week to create alignment in your life? So I want you to either write or draw your goal, whatever you want to work on this week to create alignment in your life. Maybe it's you start managing your time and energy more effectively using those management strategies we talked about, or even practicing self-care, setting aside time to do those things that you really enjoy, or practicing mindfulness, or maybe even you create and write down a boundary for yourself that you want to try. So take a moment, pause the video if you need to, write or draw something that you want to work on this week that will help you create alignment in your life. And lastly, I want to leave you with this closing statement. Alignment's just too important for us to put in someone else's hands. We can't wait for our boss or our organization to decide for us. Alignment comes from knowing what's important, using our time and energy management strategies to support this, and using self-care and mindfulness to make every moment count. Thank you for listening, and I will link a few of the videos that I got some of this information from if you're interested in watching that. But thank you very much and have a great rest of the day.